why don't we go into the discussing the objects, because that is almost more tangible, right? Like, I like the analogy of the ball being thrown into the yard. If a tennis ball is in your yard and you don't know where it came from, maybe you don't even know what a tennis ball is. You're going to be like, okay, what is this? It's a tangible object. And there's been an enormous amount of conversation, especially with the congressional hearings, of all these people claiming there are all these objects that everyone has and every government has objects, and but we can't show you, but I promise you I've seen them.
So let me tell you an anecdote on that exact issue. On the 1st of May, 2025, this year, I gave a briefing in Congress. The day before that, I was invited to visit the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in the Pentagon. And that is the organization that was established after the Director of National Intelligence submitted the 3 reports to the US Congress admitting that they're not doing their job. You know, the defense budget is almost $1 trillion for 2026. And they're supposed to figure out what flies in our sky. And yet the Director of National Intelligence was admitting that they cannot figure out the nature of some objects. To me, that's a very rare admission, because it basically says we're getting a lot of money to do the job and we don't do it. Okay, so it's a serious matter of national security. If these are manufactured by adversarial nations, we need to figure it out. That's what I said in Congress. I said, look, if you want to figure it out, I'm happy to collect a bunch of scientists that will help you do that. It's not a matter of the kind of sensors you are using. It's just like in any other scientific matter, it's the quality of the people that analyze the data. I said, if you want to invest $1 billion in getting something like the Manhattan Project, I'm all for it. And we can figure it out. But the reason I bring this up is a day after visiting. So I was at the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and this is the organization that was supposed to look into those cases, into the reports of objects that cannot be identified. And I asked them, did you find anything? You've been at it for 2 years now. And they said, no, we pretty much have access to all the information. And whenever there was data available, it looked like human-made. Nothing unusual, nothing extraterrestrial, except for a few FBI reports. That's what they said. But then in Congress, after I gave my briefing, next to me was sitting Eric Davis. He said he worked for the government decades ago, and the government has at its possession about a dozen or more than a dozen spacecraft that were retrieved from crash sites and with pilots. And there are 4 types of aliens that were recovered.
This person said that there's debris, including pilots, like
Yes.
the people who were in the unidentified.
Yes. And 4 types of those biological creatures that were recovered.
Four types of them.
Yes. Now, what I thought about is, well, first thing I thought, who should I believe? Should I believe the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in the Pentagon the day before that said there is nothing? Or should I believe Eric Davis that says I was in government and I know that this exists somewhere? And I asked my wife, who should I believe? I'm a scientist. I respond to data, and I didn't see any evidence. If I were to see something the government has, of course, I would be glad to help them figure it out. But without seeing it, I cannot just believe stories. People tell stories all the time, and when there is a car accident, you hear different reports, and each of them is different. Like different people see different things, and it's just I cannot tell if it's a real story or not. And also, I can imagine a situation where there is indeed retrieval and reverse engineering program within government, but that's for equipment that was found in crash sites of debris from adversarial nations. So we want to figure them out, and of course there might be pilots there, human pilots that belong to different nations of different types, and so the story might be twisted in a way so that those nations will not know what our intelligence agencies know. So that is a possibility. And then Eric Davis hears secondhand that there are these things, and he thinks it's aliens, but it's not really it. So I just don't know what to make of it. But here is my solution. My solution is I don't believe stories. I don't believe people. I adopt the approach of FIFA, the Soccer World Organization. When there is a disputed goal, FIFA doesn't go to the goalkeeper or goes to the audience and asks, was there a goal or not? They use cameras. They record the event with instruments that have no personality. And then they decide, was there a goal or not? And I want to approach it this. I don't care about the past. I just want to collect data that will tell me the answer, from instrument.
Okay, I'm gonna go with your criteria for data collection. There are two things in particular, two, I don't know what to call them, crafts, objects. The first is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Is it Oumuamua?
Okay, now we're dealing with something else. So previously I was talking about the unidentified anomalous phenomena that are inside the Earth's atmosphere. Now what you're talking about is something that astronomers discovered with telescopes. These are objects flying through the inner solar system, but they're not colliding with Earth, they're not coming into Earth's atmosphere, they're just passing by at a speed that indicates that they're not bound by gravity to the sun. These are called interstellar objects. And they were found only over the past 8 years, okay, with telescopes. And as you say, the first one was named Oumuamua because it was discovered by a telescope in Hawaii, and it means a scout in the Hawaiian language. And the second one was called Borisov, after the amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov that discovered it. Ended up being a comet, nothing unusual, comet similar to what we know in the solar system. Oumuamua was really peculiar because it changed its brightness by a factor of 10 as it was tumbling every 8 hours. And that variation of reflected sunlight implied, based on very detailed analysis, that it's disc-like, it's flat in its shape, very unusual. And then it was pushed away from the sun by some mysterious force without showing any evaporation. There was no cometary tail, there was no gas or dust around it. And I just suggested maybe it's a very thin object that is pushed by reflecting sunlight, and the same telescope in Hawaii, 3 years later, after 2017, in 2020, it discovered an object called the 2020 SO that was definitely pushed by sunlight, ended up being a rocket booster from a 1966 launch by NASA. And the question is, who produced Oumuamua? But then the third one was discovered on July 1st, 2025. And since then, I wrote 4 papers about it. For some reason, my name became viral on I don't have any footprint on social media, but I'm told that every second there is a tweet about it.
Where did we come from? Meaning, how did we get here?
That's an excellent question. Because humans arrived on Earth just a few million years ago. And that's a one part in 1,000 or so of the Earth's history. And when people say, we need to save the Earth went through catastrophes, many of them, before we came to exist. The Earth would survive us. We shouldn't worry about the Earth. It's about saving humanity that we should worry. And moreover, the only catastrophe that the Earth would get eliminated through is when the sun in 7.6 billion years will expand at the end of its life and will engulf the Earth. At that point, the moon, as a result of the friction on the sun's envelope, the moon will come back to Earth. The moon came from Earth, but it will come back to Earth, and then the Earth will sink all the way to the center of the sun. So that's the only reason the Earth will disappear at some point in the future. But coming back to the question, where did we come from? That's an interesting question. Of course, the standard scientific version is that we came from perhaps chimpanzees or in Africa, and but somehow we managed to develop intelligence far beyond any other species on Earth. And the question is, there is a fundamental question whether that was a result of a visit by some interstellar gardener that decided to introduce intelligence into this planet. And we just don't know because it's not documented. Humans documented history over the past 8,000 years or so. And one reason I'm seeking intelligence in interstellar space is because I don't often find it in academia.
I've been under the assumption that the process of evolution, the way I was taught as an undergraduate in graduate school, was accurate. Am I supposed to entertain the possibility that there was an interstellar visit from a being that inserted intelligence into our evolutionary DNA?
It's possible. And let me bring another possibility. We think that 66 million years ago, there was a giant rock the size of Manhattan Island that killed the non-avian dinosaurs. What if that was not a rock, but some giant thing that collided with Earth to reset the biological life on Earth? Or, there are all kinds of events if you go back hundreds of millions of years. And we just don't know. It was never documented. We don't know what happened. We know that the common ancestor of life, it's called Luca, the last universal common ancestor. Right now, it was dated by DNA to have appeared 4.2 billion years ago. That was the Earth formed around 4.5 billion years ago. And within 300 million years, life started with this common ancestor. And we don't know where it came from. It could have come from Mars because Mars cooled before the Earth. It's a smaller body. It had more surface area for its mass than the Earth, and therefore it could have cooled earlier, and life could have started on Mars. We know it had lakes, rivers, oceans of water, just like Earth. And we know that the two planets exchanged rocks. And if life started, if Luca was first on Mars and delivered to Earth with a rock, this is called panspermia. That's the delivery of life in rocks. Then what Elon Musk is trying to do right now is return to our childhood home. In fact, there were astronauts, tiny astronauts, microbes in the cores of these early rocks that were the first to make the trip from Mars to Earth. And it's possible that Luca, that started life on Earth, came from Mars. We don't know because we haven't found yet evidence for life on Mars. And when we find it, we can see if it looks just like ours.
I mean, it's kind of funny because if we hadn't read your credentials, we might say this sounds crazy. Meaning, I don't it never occurred to me. I mean, first of all, I think it's adorable that we consider, microbes that might be traveling in rocks tiny astronauts. I just think that's cute. But I think the sort of notion of, well, we could have been visited by aliens from Mars is something that many of us would not usually speak of, or assume is spoken about in legitimate academic circles, and it is.
No, there are scientific papers talking about it. It's just that we don't have the data to support it as of now. If we find life on Mars, we can check if it's identical to life on Earth, and that would suggest that the two planets shared life among them. But I can give you advice, very simple advice. If you ever encounter an alien, don't shake their hand. And the reason is simple, because life on Earth, all forms of life on Earth, has a particular helicity. The DNA molecules and RNA molecules, they all are oriented. Their structure is such that it's sort of, it has handedness. And you could have imagined mirror life where the handedness was the opposite. But all life on Earth has the same handedness. The molecules are organized. Their structure is, clockwise, let's say, and not counterclockwise. And we brought 120 grams of material from the asteroid Bennu back to Earth and studied it over the past year. And it turns out that on this asteroid, the amino acids had both chiralities, both orientations with equal probability, 50% each. And somehow this symmetry was broken when life started on Earth. Now, the reason I say don't shake the hand of an alien is because our bodies are not protected against, bacteria or other living organisms that have the opposite handedness. And in that sense, if you get a disease from a bacteria that has the opposite handedness, the body cannot cope with that because it's used to all forms of life that have the same handedness. And so it could be catastrophic health-wise. That's why I'm saying going to Mars is dangerous because if, for example, life developed there with an opposite handedness, then you might get sick and you won't survive that. And that's something that Elon Musk doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about all the health hazards, that the fact that there is obviously no atmosphere, you're not protected against cosmic rays that can damage your body, destroy your brain within a matter of a few years if you're not shielded. It doesn't talk about the temperature variations between day and night that are hundreds of degrees. We will have to go into caves if we ever go to Mars. Sort of ironic because our prehistory was in caves to protect ourselves from the weather. When we go to Mars, we'll have to go down into those caves. If I ever go to Mars, I would like to check if there are any wall paintings on the caves, because that would mean that someone was there before us.
It's towards the end of